Good evening and welcome to another episode of The Fire Caves, a Star Trek Deep Space Nine podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Perry.
So I'm your host, David. Tonight we're talking about Season 6, Episode 20, His Way. Before we continue, you can find us on Facebook, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube as The Fire Caves, a Star Trek Deep Space Nine podcast.
That is correct. As I say every single night, you should find us and follow us because we are great, we're awesome, and you're going to enjoy our show. You might not at first, but once you get into our rhythm, you will definitely enjoy our show, especially if you are a Star Trek Deep Space Nine fan, as I am, and hopefully David has become, since he has sat through now 6 seasons of this show, nearly 6 seasons. We're coming up on the end here. But yes, we are going to talk about the episode his way. But before we get into all that, of course, like to do our weekly check-in. So, David, how has your week been?
Unfortunately, it's been kind of an unhappy week. Thanksgiving was great. It was Thanksgiving week, obviously.
Hmm.
Being with family was good. Unfortunately, work the last couple of days has been absolutely terrible. I was expecting, being a Black Friday and all, to have an up week, and that has not happened. Today was completely dead at work. Yesterday had people in, but no one was biting. Day before that, pretty similar story. Ugh, not good. And then the show Arcane I mentioned. Last week I said the first part of the second season was really good. A good follow up to season one. But unfortunately, I did not care so much for the ending of season two. I felt like they were trying to do way too much. Too many things going on. They couldn't get it done, and they had a very muddled, messy ending of season two, which I also feel like missed the point of why season one was so great. Season one was a very personal story. Season two went too big, too showy. Like the last episode of season one is a small, tight, very personal drama with beautiful like visuals and implications. But the end of season two is like fighting and massive battle, which normally you would think would be fun, but it was amongst all this kind of cluttered plot lines that were trying to be resolved by the end of the season. It felt like they just took on too much. And what I like to do is I like to, like this show, we talk it out, obviously, what we think about an episode. I took notes afterward and like how I think it
Hmm.
went wrong, what would I have done different. Kind of fun to think out what some things that could have been done to maybe fix what went wrong with the show. But I was sad about that because I really enjoyed the first season and I enjoyed the first part of this season. I just feel like they just kind of fumbled the end of the season. And I'm not the only one who thinks that, apparently. I've gone online and I've seen that other people have said similar things. So it's just unfortunate. But yeah, other than that, not much else. How about you? How much new with you?
Pretty much the same. Work was actually pretty good for me. Again, we had the holiday coming up, so I'm off for the holidays, and typically anyway. And even if I do have to work, like in this particular case, it's pretty easy because everyone else is off, and the last thing anybody wants to do is work, especially the kind of work that I do, which typically involves a lot of processing and paperwork and so forth. So. Um, and then my company has this thing where basically you have like a roving holiday. You're required to work at least one holiday a year. You can leave it up to them, to the glorified algorithm, to select what holiday that is for you,
Right.
and or you can kind of opt for, you can kind of like place a bid for a holiday. It's kind of how
Pick
we
your
do it. And
poison. Right.
right, and basically they do it on a first come first served basis. Obviously people with more seniority kind of get a little bit more priority on those things. I've just gotten to the point where I just leave it up to the algorithm. I don't care. I typically don't travel because now that I live here in Texas, all of my family is here in Texas, so there's no traveling for me. Everybody's here, so you know, having to work a little bit on the holiday isn't something that really, bothers me anymore. So now I'm just like, yeah, I don't care. Just assign me whatever. And again, it's easy. You just end up sitting there and you're just waiting for somebody to do something or need something. I spend a lot of my time, reading over stuff from work, or maybe I like submit um, some ideas to make things more, efficient or whatever. But it's kind of glorified busy work until I'm needed for something. So I don't mind. Other than that, I now that the holiday is over, we've now shifted into what the hell to do with all the leftovers. So things are you know, being made, turkey pot pies, turkey soup, turkey salad, turkey this, turkey that, so forth and so on. And then the endless processing of the desserts, which, trying to control my weight. Desserts are not my friend, but my daughter loves them, so I can't not have them. And she is just in heaven. My mother, her grandmother, made Rocky Road brownies, which she is just through the moon about. And so yeah, everything is. I don't want to eat anything else. Just give me a brownie. Hey, we can't. Obviously we can't do that. So uh, other than that, things have been going pretty well, pretty steady, and I feel like there was something else, but it'll come to me. It must not have been that important, as my grandmother used to say. If you can't remember that quick, then it wasn't important. So uh, we're not here to talk about all that. We are here to talk about Star Trek: Deep Space Nine. If it comes to me, I will, of course, bring it up. But again, the episode, his way. Um, an interesting episode, a fun episode, a complicated episode, I will say.
Very.
Is
Yeah.
depending on how you are viewing it, there's a lot of things about this one that you either really like or you really don't like. Plus, we have the introduction of an all new character, something that a lot of shows um, don't do so late. Like again, this is already towards the end of the season, and we're getting a new character, so I can understand how that can be a little off-putting. Um, So yes, with that being said, would you do the recap or do you want me to do it?
I'll do it. I think you did last week, right?
Yes, I did.
With Cisco
The pale
BNR.
moonlight.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. This was a little more lighthearted than that one.
Yeah, I feel like they probably were like, you know what, we really need to do something different. We really went dark here. We need to bring some light back.
Can you imagine? I'll just say it now. That there's only like one scene with Cisco in this episode. Can you imagine him dealing with all that darkness in the last episode? In that one brief moment, Odo comes in, brings in some levity, and then he has to go back to all
You
that
know,
darkness.
that would be an interesting way to view this episode is that they were happening concurrently.
Yeah.
So while because that episode was so Cisco specific and we really didn't see a whole lot of anyone else, you
Right.
could think of that as while Cisco was dealing with this, the A plot,
Right.
this was the B plot that was going on and whatever. So
Right.
yeah, while Cisco's in there smacking around Garrick, these two lovebirds are over here making a connection. So
Right. All right, so this episode is his way. This is going to be, as we kind of mentioned, an Odo-centric episode. Um, it starts off in a hollow suite where most of the Deep Space Nine crew is listening to a 1960s Las Vegas style singer whose name is Vic Fontaine. This is one of Bashir's hollow suite um, programs. And it turns out that Vic is after he sings his song and comes over to see the crew. He knows a few more things. He knows he's a Hollow Suite character. He is able to notice that Worf and Dax are married, and that O'Brien is missing his wife. And when he goes and looks over at Odo and Kira, he stops himself from saying anything. He notices something, but he's not going to say anything more. So um, everyone's a little surprised by how insightful he is, but that's basically it for most of them. However, later Bashir is bragging to O'Brien about how insightful this Vic character is. This Holosuite program, this lounge singer, helped him, you know, break the ice with one of the girls he's with now. I forget her name at the moment, but um, he turns out that this Vic guy knows a thing or two. He's not just a program. There seems to be something more going on. And Odo overhears that and decides he's been pining for Kira for a long time, but has never really gotten anywhere with her. So he decides that he wants to see what this Vic program would have to say about his conundrum. So Kira is off on Bajor to meet with Shakar, who is the leader of the Bajorans right now, and her former boyfriend. her former lover, but they seem to have broken off and have been broken off for a while. But everyone, especially Dax, keeps joking that, oh, there must be something going on more than just a meeting between a president and a subordinate. There must be something else going on. But you know, Odo feels like he this is like his last chance. He has to do something, or else he is gonna never get with Kira. And so he actually accidentally gets that all started when Quark comes to his office for some minor reason, and Odo starts complaining about Kira. And so it's actually Quark who recommends that he do something, and then Odo decides that he wants to use the Vic character from Bashir's program. So he goes in and starts talking with Vic, and uh, they are talking one on one. And uh, Vic points out that Odo is like just is like a block of ice. He's cold. He's solid. There's no levity about him. There's no fun. And so he invites Odo up on stage to pretend to play the piano during one of Vic's shows, and Odo gets into it and starts to enjoy it. Vic arranges a double date so that Odo can practice feeling kind of relaxed around women, and just these are women that don't he doesn't have to care about. He can just have a good time with. And then later, Vic arranges an encounter with Lola, a holographic singer who looks just like Kira. She's not Kira, but Odo still plays the piano. And when they go back to Vic's suite, they're getting kind of close and almost intimate. But Odo can't accept the fact that she's not the real Kira. She looks just like her, sounds like her, and is interested in Odo, but she's not the real thing, and so he leaves. Vic, who it turns out is more and more lifelike the more we get to know him. In fact, he apparently took the Lola character from the James Bond style program that Bashir has of Kira as a Russian accented, lady of the night, and brought her over to be the Lola character in this program. How did he manage to do that? That's not very clear, but this graphic character apparently can do a few things. Um, he is able to go out into the real world, and actually even talk with Odo over the comm system. And um, he, when Kira comes back to the station and is in the Hollow Suite to do some meditation, he somehow manages to go into her program and invite her to dinner, supposedly on Odo's behalf. Odo, when he comes to this dinner to see this new improved Kira program, he thinks he's talking with the Lola program that didn't know that she was a holographic singer. This is just a better version of what is more like Kira as far as he knows. And so while he and Kira are actually connecting over this dinner date, he makes comments that reveal that he thinks that she's just a hologram. And so when Kira realizes that's what Odo thinks, she's angry, and Odo leaves angry and embarrassed because he thinks that Vic, but betrayed him or set him up to fail. Um, but Kira, in talking with Dax the next day, she says, "There's only how often do you have a moment of clarity?" And Dax says, "In my 7 lifetimes, I've only had like 2 examples." And so Kira says, "Well, then I need." Or Dax says, "You need to act on that if you had one." And so Kira confronts Odo, and they actually get into an argument on the Holosuite about what's going on. They should go to dinner and just do it for real. And heck, if they're going to go to dinner, they might as well kiss. And why not kiss now? And so Odo, in the middle of the Holosuite, grabs Kira, kisses her smack on the mouth, and yeah, they make out passionately on the on the promenade. And later, Odo goes and thanks Vic for his help. Looks like Vic is like um, like Sherlock's nemesis, Dr. Moriarty, that Dax or that Data on TNG dealt with. He's more than just a program now. He seems to have come alive on some level. So I think that's what you
He's
were
a
referring to by a
he's a
new
fully aware heuristic hologram, so he's different, you know.
right.
And it's not the first time that Trek has done this. As you said, the first time really would be with Professor Moriarty achieving, at least as far as we can tell, a level of sentience, self awareness.
Hmm.
We later see this with the Doctor on Star Trek Voyager. And then we see it here with Vic. And then they kind of intimate that it happens a few other times elsewhere. So, um, to me, it's kind of problematic that you have these basically people that are created out of thin air. These programs, and it seems like depending on how they're programmed, and in the case of the Doctor on Voyager, uh, the longer they run and the more things they're exposed to, they kind of become self-aware,
Right.
and they're sentient. So the fact that they're sentient beings that you can then just turn on and off or reprogram whenever the mood strikes you, or a lot of other things it seems like you can do with them, problematic at best. So and
Yeah.
Star Trek really hasn't addressed um, that issue fully. So I don't know if they ever will. I think it seems like I feel like it's a problem that they branched into and didn't realize, and they haven't really found a way to kind of walk it back yet. But anyway, we'll get into that and some other things here with this episode. First thing I want to ask you, of course, is first impressions. What did you think of his way and our new character Vic?
Yeah, so I like this episode in the sense that the character of Vic was very interesting. His worldview was consistent. I liked the lounge singer. He sings the Sinatra song "Fly Away" at least
Come fly with
twice.
me, yes.
Oh, sorry, "Come Fly with Me." Correct me there. Um, and it's a classic song. Everyone who's heard it has heard it a million times and can just sing along with anyone who could sing it. Um, and so I like that his casual energy. I like the just practice. Like he brings
Hmm.
the girls in, and Odo is like, "Who are these girls? I don't know them." And he's just like, "You don't have to worry about it. You're just practice. You're just getting to spend some time with some lovely women." Uh, that energy that he's basically the best wingman you could ever ask for.
Hmm.
He's super casual. He's very charming in his own right, and he works hard to get Kira and Odo together as a computer program who somehow magically whisks his way from one program to another, who can program other characters. I mean, again, he brought the Kira program from the James Bond style one over to his and programmed the Russian accent out of her. Like, what's going on? This Vic Fontaine guy is definitely more than meets the eye.
Oh yeah.
um, so I like that. The Odo Kira relationship, I have felt the whole time, is definitely going to require a lot of work to make it make sense and work. And this episode does do quite a bit to make that make sense. Like,
Yeah.
for example, Odo has been passing on anything for a year. She knows his feelings. He has made that clear, and she knows he hasn't done anything about it. If she's going to move on, say back to being with Shakar, that would be on Odo for not having done anything. And then this one makes sense. Odo learns to kind of be more relaxed, to be cool. As Vic says, you're like a block of ice. It's okay to be cool, but you can't be frozen stiff.
Hmm.
So for him to kind of learn to relax, learn to be more fun, that makes sense. I don't feel like we got quite enough of that yet to feel like Odo's truly 100% changed. But
Yeah, this
if
was about him taking the first major steps. It's
right,
not a him emerging from this the perfect new form of Odo. This was him beginning to kind of
right,
understand those things. So
right, and
yeah,
then I'll finish by saying this. This episode reminded me of the TNG episodes where Geordie LaForge has a character that he interacts with. There's an episode where he has to figure out something to do with the
Dr. Leah
engine.
Brahms,
Exactly, Dr. Leah Brahms. He's
Galaxy's
having
Child.
Exactly. He's having to work on the engines of the Enterprise, and he needs a holodeck program, and he has the computer recreate Dr. Brahms, and they say it's like a 97% compatibility with the real person. But by the end of that episode, the holodeck version of Dr. Brahms kisses Jordy,
Hmm.
and he's attracted to her the whole time, but there's something there, right? Well, when the real Dr. Brahms comes on board several episodes later and she finds this program and this kind of dolled up version of herself, it turns out the real woman is noticeably different than her holosuite version. She's upset by the fact that Jordy seemed to have basically a dolled up version of herself for him to play with,
Once
if you
again,
will.
first indicator of some problems with the holodeck.
Exactly. I
All
mean,
right,
yeah.
you can
So,
recreate people. I mean, it's
right,
one thing to create historical figures, Isaac Newton,
right,
whatever, but Leia Brahms was living and breathing. She was just the
right.
next sector away.
Right.
It wasn't like she existed 200 years ago. She's right there.
Right.
So yeah.
Exactly. And so the idea of practice earlier, which like practice just being comfortable around women, to practice on this highly realistic version of the person you're interested in takes on a whole new meaning.
Oh yeah.
And I don't really remember all that happens necessarily with Jordy. I think she's upset, but she
They
kind of
they
they go their separate ways.
they eventually establish a tentative friendship, and they go their separate ways, and then
And
it's
she's
kind
like
of,
engaged already too.
yeah,
Like,
she was like already married. She wasn't just engaged, she was already
yeah,
married. And so it's kind of
yeah,
intimated that they maintain kind of like a pen pal relationship. They shoot each other ideas and
which is funny
things
because
like
that the
that.
computer didn't know at 97% probability that she was married. It's like, come on, computer. Maybe she got married afterward to be
Well, yeah,
truthful.
the computer only knows what you update into it, right? So
Yeah,
I mean, it's conceivable that she just never changed her marital status. you
right.
know
Yeah.
so yeah. um I always think of this episode, as much as I like this episode, I always call it the introvert's fever dream,
Uh-huh. Oh
because
yeah.
it's like it's what every introvert would love, right? You've got the ultra cool friend who can just, they just do everything well, and they
Yes.
take you under their wing and they guide you through to being just as cool as them, with the ultimate goal of you being the guy that gets the girl. Instead of it
Right.
always being someone else, instead of it always being your friend, it is now you. They're
Right.
showing you how to do those things. Like every 80s movie ever was this.
Right.
I've joked about it a lot, a couple times, like, you like all the writers in this room, you can tell they grew up watching those 80s movies, and this was their way of kind of, fixing the glaring problem, right, of the
Hmm.
best friend who always is the best friend, right?
Right.
um but even with that being said, I agree that, I as much as I like this episode and I like how it ends, I do feel like we just didn't see enough of certain things to make the idea of the relationship work. Now, granted, this is only the first step, so what we see after this and them being in a relationship is really good at what's going to tell us if it works or not.
Hmm.
um because this was kind of teased all the way back in, I believe, season 2, season 3, with that episode, The Collaborator, where we saw, Odo kind of hinting that he had some feelings for Kira. And then of course we saw the episode where the crew was thrown 300 years into the past on that planet, Meridian, I think it was.
Yeah.
And Kira was going to die, and Odo came and told her his feelings, and then he altered the trajectory of the ship so that she lived, and so she's
Right.
still aware of his feelings, and Odo is aware that she knows because the other one told him, and so forth. I mean, we see the hiccup between them with the Dominion and the founder kind of influencing Odo and messing with him a bit, and it's kind of his feelings for Kira really that kind of shake him out of whatever brainwashing, I guess it is, that
Hmm.
the founder was doing to him
Right.
at that time. So we know that he has had long-standing feelings for her, and they are kind of intense. What we really haven't seen is any reciprocation of those feelings from
Yes.
Kira. We know that she values him. We know that she likes him. We know that she thinks of him as a friend, but we've never seen anything that would say to us, "Oh, she also has some kind of attraction, some kind of feeling." And I think this episode was supposed to be that. We saw a couple of times where it's like she literally is looking at him in a new light.
Right.
But I think in order to make this episode a little bit more successful, they should have had more of that on Kira's side. Um, but we missed that because we know that she had to play double duty here as the holographic version of herself singing "Fever" in the episode, and then of course we have
Brilliant.
to
I love
know.
that was a great moment too.
Oh,
Yeah, sorry.
don't worry, we're gonna get there. But also we know like there the hanging Chad here that is Shakar. We need to know what their status truly is, and we really don't get that until the end, really. We know that she's gone to Bejor to see Shakar. We don't know how it went. We almost are being led to believe that it's going very well because at one point they say that she is staying on Bejor a couple of extra days. So all by all reckoning, that sounds like they're reconnecting.
Right.
And so it's not until right at the end when Odo confronts her that we find out that her trip to Bejor was completely business and had nothing to do with anything else. So um, I just feel like if we had found out that they had broken up a while back, and maybe if Kira was doing a few more things to like spend a little bit more time with Odo, because like our last major thing we saw between the two of them was more of a falling out because of the founder and what happened during the Dominion siege, which was early on in season 6. We never
Yeah.
really saw them
Oh wow.
interacting again. Yeah, we never really
Mhm.
saw them interacting again after that. So if we had seen a couple more things that showed that they had at least gotten over that a little bit. Um, and you know what? Now that I say that, we did see one, and it's a big one. It's during the episode you are cordially invited for Worf and Jadzia's wedding. When
Yes.
Jadzia throws the party, Odo comes to shut the party down because of all the noise complaints, and Kira overrides him as first officer. And
Right.
then they stop to have a talk, and they disappear to
And
go
talk
and
all night
talk about
long.
yeah, and they end up talking all night long in the little private room or whatever, where Worf finds them the next day. And so, I mean, again, something that we did not see on screen, which we should have seen on screen, at least a little bit more of that. But that's kind of the only other time. So that, yeah, just if we would have had more of Kira being receptive, I think
Yeah.
that would have helped out with this.
And that really honestly is the problem. I
Yeah.
I can understand Odo's longing for Kira, but they've known each other for so long. The idea that the two of them haven't come to some sort of straight up, this is our relationship now. I mean, if they've known each other for a decade, like we're on season 6 of the show, she was on Deep Space Nine. We know for at least a couple of years, right? And so when during these Cardassian occupation, that is. So they've known each other long enough that their relationship has, on some level, solidified into what it is. And Vic says, "Well, she's already your friend. Like you're already halfway there. You just gotta keep going, or just push it along somehow." But yeah, the idea that Kira has never, I mean, when she was sitting there at the dinner table with Odo, he's in his, tux, and she's got on a nice dress, but it was more of what she was just wearing that day.
Hmm.
She didn't come to it. Well, no, that's not quite right. Well, so Vic comes to her when she's meditating, and that's the same outfit she was wearing when she was meditating. So yeah, she didn't necessarily do anything that made it seem like she has been anticipating this moment for a long time, even this season. Um, the conversation she has, like he says, I've been thinking about. Well, actually, he said to the not Kira Hollow Sweet, like I've been thinking about this for ages. When he puts his hands on, like she comments on his hands. So he says you have a beautiful voice. You have beautiful hands. He's got his hands like on her shoulders, kind of rubbing her shoulders in an intimate
Hmm.
way. But then he's like, I can't do this. This is a fake version of her. My point is that yeah, as you said, Kira has not given us any feedback that
Any
she
that she had anything other than professional or friendly feelings towards Odo, not
exactly
really. And
right.
even with the conversation that they had in You Are Cordially Invited, it more seems like they resolved their issues enough to reestablish their friendship, not to
Right.
move beyond that. And so then it seems here like this is really Odo kind of driving this along. He has gotten to a point where he's tired of just having a friendship, which is perfectly fine, but um they really did try to make it seem like in order for the relationship to come about, it was really all on Odo, and that's not really typically the case in things.
Right.
Both people have to really kind of be into it. Again, this is why it strikes me, because this is a very typical thing done in the 90s and in the 80s and so forth. These movies that it's basically the person who is the one exemplifying the love interest, the person that they are in love with, is totally oblivious. They have no indications whatsoever, and you have to, you know win them over. You have to convince them. You have to, whatever. And it always just kind of rang uh false to me, because
Yeah.
it's like, how can you convince someone to love you? They either do or they don't. I mean,
Right.
it can grow from things, sure, but
Right.
those things have to actually occur. You can't just suddenly go from nothing to just being friends or business partners or whatever your situation is, to
Right.
head over heels with someone without there being several things that
Right.
um, get you there. So yeah, definitely a very common late 80s, early 90s trope of this kind of looking at the other person through these, rose-colored glasses, as it were.
Yeah.
So,
Well, so what's interesting about this episode is I think that the Vic character does point out something that is true about Odo in general, is that he's not someone who really knows how to have fun. It's the idea
yes.
that that was all maybe that's all that's really holding him back. Like Kira does have, I mean, maybe Odo and is more enamored with the idea of the grand romantic gesture, and he's never been able to figure out how to show it. But what really
Yeah.
all is needed is just don't be all business all the time,
Yeah. I
um,
think
and
I think
that
that's fair.
and that Kira could get on board with that. She is someone, as she says to him when they are in the hollow suite, like she's someone who has used work to push out her private life, so she can relate. And so if Odo can be a guy who has learned to play the piano, has learned a little French, has learned to dance, Kira maybe really could get on board with that lighter version of Odo. I don't.
Yeah.
I can see it. It's just we got it. We got to need to see more of it. This can't be
Yeah.
the only time. They can't go from this episode and into the next one just boom, like they're all out in love. Maybe they are, but we're gonna have to see that Odo has been
And and
being more fun and Kira's on board, etc. Yeah,
and again, this is why I say it really feeds into that whole introverts, dream
yeah.
kind of thing of being an extrovert. These are attributes, these are qualities that they see in an extrovert that makes them so well liked by other people.
Hmm.
Odo is very much seen as this kind of one-dimensional individual, and this, with the introduction of Vic, we see him becoming multifaceted. But the truth of it is, he's always been this way. We just didn't have the necessary catalyst to draw it out of him. Him learning the to not even really to play the piano. It wasn't really about playing the piano or learning French, learning to dance or any of these things. It was more about him learning to be comfortable with himself and in just different scenarios. And like
Hmm.
Kira says, I thought the only thing that you enjoyed was your work. To me, that line, when she says that, it kind of screams out the fact that there is not enough personal between them. If Because it's as friendly as they're supposed to be, as long as they've known each other. If she says, I thought the only thing that you enjoyed was your work, and you know for a fact that you enjoy other things, that tells me y'all don't spend enough time together doing things that are a bit more um vulnerable, I guess,
Hmm.
for a lack of a better word, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's one of those things that has been an issue with the character of Odo for a while. And we talked about this before. I believe it was season 4, when Odo really kind of had his first fling, as it were, his first
Let's say
romantical entanglement.
it was
Oh,
actually
I
last
hate
season,
that.
season 5. But yeah.
Oh, season 5. Well, yeah, and I talked about how this was kind of Odo's latent coming of age story was the story that we really needed him to have in order to make certain things that happen for him in the future. Because I didn't tell you what it was. I remember now. I did not tell you what was coming in the future, but I said it was necessary for him to have this moment and have these experiences in order for him to be ready for something that was more considered more mature, more genuine, which would now be this relationship with Kira. And so there's the learning curve that he's having to go through with some of these things is very severe because obviously we're dealing with a show filmed during a certain era, and they need him to be a certain way in order to get to those parts.
Right. Yeah, that last episode with him was a simple investigation,
Hmm.
and he falls in love with the woman that turns out like her memory has been altered to
Yeah,
make her
she's like a deep cover cop,
right.
basically. So much so that she's forgotten who she really is, and the disc that she's trying to access contains all of her memories.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
And what's interesting about that episode, from what I remember of it, like Odo falls in love with her because it's a serious relate. It is serious. Things are serious. She needs protection.
She's a damsel in distress.
Exactly, and that's exactly the type that Oda would fall for because that's the kind of guy he is. He's the
He's the hero.
he's
The justice, the guy who delivers justice, and,
exactly
and in this instance, because he is the one delivering justice, she falls for him.
right,
His investigative style, his willingness to be her ally and to do
right,
things for her, makes her fall for him, and this is what he anticipates in other scenarios.
right. And so I think that's what's kind of unfortunate about the Kira character here is that she she could be a damsel in distress of sorts, which I think that is a feminine aspect that our culture doesn't value. The idea that women and their vulnerability is partly what inspires men to do good. I have the power to protect her when she's vulnerable, and that's I love her, and that's how I express my love in a sense. But our culture wants women to be powerful and strong, and Kira is that type. I mean, frankly, there are many times when Kira and I forget her name from TNG that first season, the security officer,
Tasha
um,
Yar.
Tasha Yar. Both of them are lovely ladies, but man, there are times when they get into some fight scenes and it looks choreographed.
Well,
I mean, it's is what it is. Don't get me wrong. I mean, maybe in
well,
the future
and
they'll be stronger, but
I feel like a lot of that is born out of the if you look at the way that Star Trek is segmented, when it started in the 60s, it was just these guys doing these things and mainly Shatner doing a lot of these things. And then you come into the 80s and they are trying to show that Star Trek has progressed, things have changed, and they definitely need to show that these, they can have more of these fight scenes, but it's not something that Trek had ever really done to a major degree, especially with women. So trying to figure out a way to do that does end up with something that looks very kind of disjointed,
and I
choreographed.
want to be clear. There are times when the male characters look just as choreographed as the female characters. My point is that by making Kira into a strong woman type, it has been it harder for Odo to present. Like Odo
Well,
can't. It's harder for him to be his yin to her yang if she's got a bit more yin or her yin and yang are a little more balanced out. If you get my sense of my meaning.
yeah,
Um, yeah.
I would just hesitate to characterize her just as strong woman archetype or whatever. I
Oh,
feel like
I
it
don't
was
want to.
more.
Yeah.
Well, I just feel like it was more about her being um, I guess, more fully aware of herself. She's very self-sufficient. The same is
Sure.
true of, I feel like it's true also of Tasha. They could take care of themselves. And I feel like I understand what you were saying. Like sometimes, especially with the way that society has progressed to a certain degree, some people do feel like we've gotten to a point where we're saying that, women um, um, shouldn't rely on a man to uh, protect them in that particular regard.
Right.
I believe in self-sufficiency. Self-sufficiency. I believe every person should be able to take care of themselves in some regard. But I also believe part of that self-sufficiency is also recognizing when you can't do everything, and it's perfectly okay to ask other people to help you when you can't do everything. It's a
100%.
balancing act between knowing how to do that and when to use that, because some people overuse it and suddenly they've gone from being self-sufficient to dependent, and that's the part that throws me off. And that can be a man or a woman, can fall into this kind of dependency on somebody else when they really should be able to do a lot of things on their own.
Right.
And I think that Kira exemplifies that to a certain degree here. She takes care of herself. She takes care of her relationship stuff. Like I said, it's just a matter of certain things not being shown to us, which can make us think that that something was missing. So like I'll be looking forward as well, I'm sure you are since you haven't seen it, to how their relationship develops throughout the remainder of the show and how they work together as a couple. Because if it does show that these two are able to support each other without one being dependent upon the other in any particular regard, or one kind of giving in to the other, because that often happens too with some of these shows. When the couple finally becomes the couple, one kind of takes over and takes the lead, and so the thing that you liked the most about the other character goes away while this other one really overshadows them. Hopefully we don't see that here.
Right.
And in reference, yes, to the Star Trek double fisted downward punch, that is something that they do a lot in Trek, the choreographed move. And don't know if anyone has tried it. I have tried it. It hurts. I don't know why anybody would do that. It hurts. It hurts you, the person doing it. Just you're putting your hands together like this, and you're bringing them down or bringing them across. It is not a super strong punch. It's very awkward. It's very ungainly. You've got one, no matter what direction you're doing it, you're restricting your range of motion with the other side of your body.
It's
And then
true.
your fingers are all exposed here. So when you bring them down, all of that pressure
On your
is right
pinky.
and it's on your interlocked knuckles and stuff. If you're not breaking these first two fingers when you're doing it,
You got to
uh,
hit with the paw with the best part of your hand. You're doing
right?
it wrong.
Yeah, still, even with that much force concentrated right here in this kind of meaty part of your hand, you're still going to mess up your wrists. There's nothing about this hitting someone that is in any way effective. So don't do it. Don't do it. All right. I
Oh,
really, the most effective thing I've ever seen, when you want to give a strong blow but do as minimal damage to your hands that I've ever seen, is the open palm. Put your force here in this and deliver your blow. You can break noses. I can personally attest you can break sternums. Done it. You can, if you have enough power, you have enough force, you hit them here with all of this, you can do some damage, and your fingers are just fine, just fine.
that was must have been a
So
football
it was.
accident that happened. Man,
Yeah, I
yikes!
mean, punches are great, but you can break fingers, you can mess up your knuckles, you can do a lot of damage to your own hands with punches. That's why they teach people the proper technique to make a punch, and you see boxers wrap their fingers and all that other kind of stuff. But nothing beats the good old open palm for maximum effect on them and minimal damage to yourself. So
I'll
from
remember that.
someone who's been in a couple things, I'm just telling you, from that's my own personal experience. Believe it or not, I don't care. I just know that I personally have seen it work. So there.
Yeah.
Anyway, on to our new character, Vic Fontaine. Vic Fontaine, played by James Darren, who sadly passed away this year at the age of 88. He died actually really just a couple of months ago. He died in September,
Okay.
just right before Star Trek Day,
Mm.
as a matter of fact. So he was 88 years old, and he's only in 7 episodes of Trek, but man, does he make his mark. He started his career out really early, all the way back in the 50s with a movie called Gidget. He did several other movies and TV shows, including TJ Hooker, where he starred alongside younger William Shatner and even younger, um, what was her name? Heather Locklear. That was her name. Yeah, so he's done a lot. He was famously friends with like Frank Sinatra Jr. and so forth, and he very much kind of embodied that late stage Rat Pack type um, lounge singer, crooner type. You can listen to his music right now on Spotify. Just search for James Darren. He actually recorded all of the songs that we hear that he sings in Deep Space Nine, both in this episode and in later episodes. He recorded all of those and released an album. It's called This One's from the Heart. So if you are ever curious, just go anywhere that you listen to music, Spotify, Amazon, whatever, and you can hear and hear these songs. I've listened to it several times. I think he does a great job. I think he's a great singer. I think he proved he was a great singer here in this episode. Um, Wonderful character, Vic, and again, this super advanced, seemingly sentient algorithm, computer program, this light bulb, as he calls himself.
Oh, that's right. I forgot to say that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked him too. Again, I liked the way he interacted with Odo. I liked the it's just kind of easy casualness of the character. Like he's fully realized as a character as that lounge singer
Hmm.
Sinatra type. I mean, he really fits the mold perfectly. Um, so I as you were talking, I guess I was curious. So I just briefly saw he's going to be in a number of episodes. I guess here coming up soon. I'm not
Yeah.
looking up details, but this is not the only time we see the Vic Fontaine character, huh?
No, it is not. Like I said, I believe he appears in 7 episodes. He kind of has the role of unofficial counselor here on Deep Space Nine. Like as we see him break down the characters, he can tell that Worf and Jadzia recently married, O'Brien misses his wife, so forth and so on. He does do that for other characters. And one of the greatest character development episodes ever is in the pipeline. It involves Vic. It's a really great, really touching episode that we're going to get to soon. So I'm not going to tell
Okay,
you which one it is. It will happen.
right.
Um, but the character of Vic is interesting because he is playing the persona is 1960s Vegas lounge singer, and yet he is fully aware of the fact that he is actually some 400 years in the future, and he's perfectly at home with everybody else. And clearly, he has the ability to modify his program to some degree because he's able to. Um, Turn himself off and on. He can move through programs like when Kira is meditating, he's able to move from his program to hers. He can access the communications array because he contacts Odo a few times to call him and speak with him and so forth. So clearly, he's got extra abilities beyond just singing and looking good in the tux here.
Right.
So I, let's talk. While talking about Vic, we also talk about holograms here. The problem with holographic technology. All right, as you said,
We've definitely talked about it before, but we definitely have to here.
we really do. So I mean, we already have the issue with Leia, and we can kind of leave that alone. Um, but what we're
Leia or
seeing,
Lola?
no, so we were talking about like Leia Brahms, her
Oh,
issue,
Brahms. Oh, I'm
right?
sorry, Dr. Brahms. Yeah, yeah,
Oh, and yeah, I didn't talk about that as a thing. He was able to access a completely different holographic program and bring
bring
over
it.
an image, modify it, and use it. And that's a problem too, because if you remember that episode where Kira was playing Colonel Romanov, that was a transporter accident. It wasn't programmed, it was a
Oh,
transporter accident.
you're
That character
right.
was sublimated by Kira's transporter
Oh, you're
pro
right.
uh transporter whatever.
Right.
So really, technically, that shouldn't even have existed. The real Romanov, whatever, that character should have been there when he went to access it, not Kira.
Oh
So
man.
lots of problems there because that means that somewhere in the system, the computer scanned all of them. Cisco, Worf, Kira, O'Brien, scanned all of them and substituted them into that program and then kept their copies in that program. So when they fixed it and brought them out, like a portion of them never came out because he's got access. So that means there's a portion of all of them still locked away in there
Uh, well,
that
I mean,
no one's
Vic
touched.
did say something about like I have the photographic version. I don't know. Maybe it all it really was just the picture, just the
No, because
measurement stuff like that.
remember, we saw Quark trying to get pictures of Kira
That's
before,
true.
and it never worked. The only way he would have been able to do it is because of that program. So, and then the other part of it that's a problem too is Quark stores all of his holographic programs in that little box.
Yep.
So, unless the program is running, how would Vic have accessed her image to create that?
Yeah. He
Whatever.
didn't just get her. It turns out it
Yeah,
must have happened a while ago or something. Or
yeah.
yeah.
Or someone's been accessing it
Or
for it to be
maybe
available
I don't know,
for
maybe
him.
Vic's overplaying his hand. It's not him that brought her over. It was Bashir who brought her over, and now Vic's saying he did it. But Bashir, at once upon a time, brought a Kirized version of a singer. I don't
Mm.
doubt that Bashir is creepy enough to have hooked up with holographic versions of Dax and Kira. I don't
Bashir has
doubt that he
definitely
has.
lost his boyish charm, um, but yeah, I mean, it's just the remarkable amount of leeway and ease with which Vic is able to access all of the computer systems that he needs to whenever he needs to and do what he wants without getting caught. He tripped no alarms in contacting Odo through the comm system or by leaving the one hollow suite and going into the other. There seemed to be no kind of blockages for that at all, which I found alarming. But he's able to subvert all of that seemingly to do whatever it is that he wants. Um, yeah. So with that, he gives off s- gives us a sense that he is just shy of sentient, right? Like he's if you he could
Or
probably make an argument
sentient,
that he
but like
is
he's okay with it, like his situation.
right.
Like I'm happy to be this and nothing more.
And like, is he okay with it, or is that part of his programming that he hasn't overcome yet? So there's that, and then it's just like, okay, so what if he decides one day, you know what? As much as singing for you guys, as much fun as that's been for the past 2 years, 10 years, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to go to Riza. I want to check that out.
Yeah,
I just want to go where I want to go, right?
right.
I want to live a life. Well, conceivably, the holograms are immortal. As long as there's a power system, there's nothing to stop them,
Even
right?
then, they could just come plug it back in, and
Right.
yeah,
As long as they have a power source of some kind. I mean, there's stars everywhere. I'm assuming solar is still going to be a thing in 400 years. So there's nothing that would stop them. They don't age. So whatever age they're created at, that's what they're going to stay at forever. Right.
that's why that
Um,
Doctor Moriarty episode is pretty important because that's exactly what happens. He wants out.
Right. And I mean, and then so then you have to think of the greater implications of what else is going on in those hollow programs, in the holodeck, the hollow suite, whatever you want to call it. We are creating whole people to do with as we please, and then we're shutting them off. And since Vic clearly demonstrates that he remembers from the last time he was activated to the next time that he's activated, do they go into some weird void where there's nothing and they don't remember anything? Or are they tracking the amount of time that has passed since the last time they were activated? Like, what existential crisis are we inflicting on these sentient AI programs every time we turn them on and shut them off and make them do our bidding?
That's a great question.
It's just awful. It's absolutely awful. And then, I'm sure that everybody's mind goes more towards like dirty things or whatever when we say, "What would you do in a holodeck?" Right? If you had total control and access, and your holodeck programs are supposed to be very
Private.
private. So
Mm.
whatever you do in them
For a reason.
is,
Yeah.
yeah, you know,
What's that character from TNG who has the whole TNG cast at his beck and
Reginald
call?
Barkley,
Yeah, Barkley
Lieutenant
makes
Reginald Barkley.
has a Riker short and
Yeah, and he's got
with
Beverly
pipsqueak.
fawning over him and stroking his hair, and
Yeah.
uh Deanna's the goddess of love or whatever it was she was, and uh, you know, and even that seems to be a bit more naive. Worf has his programs that are just murder monsters trying to
Yeah.
kill everything,
And like
you know.
literally they could kill him in the hollow suites while he's in there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, so
We
what's to
know that
stop someone
O'Brien is dislocated his shoulder on the
mm,
rapids.
multiple times,
Like
you know?
that's the real question. Like, why aren't all of them? There must be some group that's like addicted to the holodecks.
It
Like,
there is a
there's some
thing. There is a thing. It's called hollow addiction. You can suffer from it.
right.
Barkley suffers from it, and that's
Yeah,
part of the
that's
reason
hundred
he ends
percent
up
true.
going to counseling with Deanna is to get over his hollow addiction,
Right.
which meets with, in my opinion, no degree of success. It continues forever, well past Next Generation. He pops up in Voyager, still struggling with hollow addiction. No,
Really?
yeah, he does. He
How does
does
he end up in
bad.
Voyager?
He is working on Earth on a plan to make contact with Voyager, and he
Oh.
uses the holodeck to do it. But he basically becomes like he starts living on the holodeck, on the holographic version of Voyager.
Well, wasn't it his character who had like an epiphany and they became like a god inside of it at one point in
Well, that
TNG?
was when he was taken over. That's the episode was called the Nth Degree. He was taken over by that probe,
Oh,
which
right.
made him super smart. And then, yeah, he ran to the holodeck and created a supercomputer chair, which allowed him to take over the entire Enterprise and far fling them through the galaxy. If I was Captain Picard, I would have been like, "No more holodeck for you, like at all. Like while
Yeah.
you're on my ship, you can't. You better not even walk down that corridor. I will have Worf throw you straight in the brig if I catch you anywhere
Yeah.
near it. Like don't go near it. You're not allowed." So yeah, it's awful. He's absolutely awful. And again, he never really gets over it. Never gets treated for it. But like people can go into the holodeck, create scores of people, hordes of them, and then murder them all if they want
Right.
to. Nothing's to stop them. They can go in there and obviously have massive orgies if that's what they want to do. Again, no one to stop them. But we're creating people.
Yeah.
And
And
what's to
that's
stop somebody from being like, I'm dying, I'm gonna die, and I know I have this incurable, terrible disease. Barkley's already proven you can upload your entire consciousness to the thing. So why not upload your consciousness, download it into a nice, pristine, never gonna get sick holographic body, move on. You live
live
forever
forever.
doing
Yeah.
stuff.
I'm sure there's someone out there who's tried it.
Well, I
Deep
mean,
in the darkest depths of Star Trek lore, there's some person who's tried that.
that you know what I'd watch that episode. I'd watch, what, that should be the show. The whole show is somebody who took the technology to the ultimate extreme. They created a holographic version of themselves. They slapped together technology from the different shows, and they're just living, right? But then Starfleet gets aware of it and they want to track this person down. So now the whole show is kind of like The Fugitive, but in Star Trek. And this guy's got to stay one step ahead of them from shutting him down. But
From
then
the
he's
real
like,
world. Yeah.
right. But then he's kind of like pulling the Incredible Hulk, where he's like, he goes to places and he like save lives and he averts disasters and he's like a superhero. But again, got to stay one step ahead of the law because they're coming for him.
You
And
know,
there's
actually, the movie based on the book, Ready Player One, that is kind of what's happening. The main character is a young teenager who, in the real world, lives in a slum, but in the computer world, he's a super skilled player in this, worldwide game, and he can kick butt in tech games in the computer world. But in the real world, he's lives in a slum. So that's
Hmm.
not quite exactly what you just proposed, but he is being chased by an evil corporation in the real world and in the internet world. So there's
I would love that show. And then you have like this one captain who's like obsessed with him, and it's like slowly but surely losing his mind, losing perspective while he hunts this guy down.
right,
It's like become his sole driving mission.
right,
Yeah, I can already just see it, man. Several episodes of this show and how close they come to catching him, and he always slips away in the last minute. It'd be great. It'd be a
right.
great show.
Yeah. Ah,
So, um, would you do it though? Would you, if you had access to a holodeck? Do you feel like you would use it a lot just to, kind of everything from
well,
dealing with stress to just, hey, this is a great way to go on a vacation without really leaving, you know?
I mean, I think I would be tempted in all the ways that everyone else is tempted, but I think the thing that I would really love would be the ability to create stories. Like I talk about we should do this or that, but it's hard. But the holodeck would make it so easy. You just walk in there and you say, "Give me like recreate that scene from whatever," and there it is. And now I want to make a change to it. I want you want Kira to have the dark ending with in that episode with
Mhm.
the Cardassian guy, and I want the happy ending. But you could give us that dark
Give
ending
us both and see which one
is more
which one stack out.
popular. Yeah, yeah. So you could really that would be honestly one of the most enjoyable things. And it's interesting. It feels like a lot of characters obviously are using like Bashir is acting out the James Bond character basically whenever he plays in
Mhm.
those roles. But it's interesting that it's like no one's invited in to like watch it. It's not a place where people go to create and then bring stuff out from it into the world and say, "Here's what I created." It's just private. It's just
Yeah.
experiential, which is interesting.
Well,
Um,
Bashir does say, like, Bashir is not making these programs. He's purchasing them from
True.
somebody. And so there is some kind of openness and transactional nature, at least on Deep Space Nine, of these programs.
Right.
On Next Generation, it seems like any program that's on the Enterprise, the person operating the holodeck during that time created said program. So,
Right.
but there have to be certain common points of reference for things, there's a lot about holotechnology that we're really just not told. In order to create the mood and the atmosphere of like the jazz bar that we see in Next Generation, where Riker interacts with Minuet. Um, there had to be some kind of scan of pictures of locations or something to be able for the computer to then recreate that image. When Picard goes into the holodeck and recreates Paris on a spring day, there again there has to be some kind of common frame of reference for that image to then be created.
Right.
So we're just not aware of how they're getting that information.
Yeah, I guess what I'm getting at though is like it doesn't seem like people use the hollow deck, the hollow suite to create something and then bring something out of it. Like they don't create art in it to then present to the world where it's private and the computer can just generate say a what's the not a painting a canvas. Like it presents you a canvas, it presents you the paint, and then you make
And
your
then the
painting.
person sitting in there would then paint themselves, like, they could paint a picture of a vase or whatever, but then when they're done painting, you're saying they couldn't then pick up said holographic canvas and walk through the door
Right.
with it.
Or there's not some way to then 3D print, like we have the food processors, what are those called? The
Replicators.
replicators. There's no like replicator. We haven't seen a replicator used in conjunction with the hollow suite, hollow deck to
You
then
are correct.
to bring out
However
an item.
however, there is I'm going to label this as a conspiracy theory. I can't think of any other way to really talk about it.
Okay.
That basically says that all of those technologies are created and that certain aspects of things within the holodeck are created just as you say they are. But the more complex organism things, people, for example, are not. And that's why people, when they're created, can't walk off the holodeck. If you create like a chair or a piece of paper or something like that, depending on the level of sophistication of the holodeck or the holosuite that you're in, there's every possibility that you could walk off the holodeck with said chair.
Right.
Um, in fact, there is an episode of Voyager where um, Captain Janeway is recording her captain's log, and she does it in the holodeck. And instead of speaking it aloud as we've heard the captains do, she's writing it on a piece of paper in the holodeck.
Right.
And so then at the end of that little scene, when she's done and she's talking with her first officer, Commander Chakotay, she gets up from the desk and they are seen leaving the holodeck together and she's carrying the piece of paper. So, and they walk out the door.
Right.
So it's kind of alluded there that because she created a simple piece of paper, she was able the replicators did their thing, and that's a legitimate piece of paper that she's using to do that, but she did it in the holodeck.
Right.
um but we also see in Next Generation, with that episode with Moriarty, when they're trying to get him to leave the holodeck, they are testing out their ability to move matter from the holodeck to the actual transporter, beaming it out.
Right.
And they can't do it because there's no matter. The chair that was created on the holodeck,
Hmm.
there's no matter for it to lock onto to then transport.
Right.
So it seems an outgrowth of the technology is that the replicators being tied into the system, when you order certain things, when you do certain things, those things are created in the holodeck for you to enjoy as a part of the program, like food, for example. The
Right.
replicate, you go and you make an order, the replicator makes said food, the holographic waiter delivers said food, you're able to still have the meal.
Right.
Um, but none of this has ever really like been explicitly said or spelled out. It's entirely it's very complicated. That's the kind of thing that you would really read in a book or it'd be in a movie maybe. I don't know, but yeah, it's something that you would just have to make several intuitive leaps to kind of get us there, and really have to watch the episodes closely to see that they've kind of they've started to lay it out a little bit, but it hasn't been explicitly done to say that's how it is.
Right. Yeah, and to be fair to the shows, it maybe very well be the idea is just that we're watching a show where this one story is being told. We don't have time to get into all the other things
Hmm.
that might have happened other times, other places. We're just talking about this right now. So I want to be fair to the show that way. I guess what I'm getting at is that the hollow suites and the hollow decks are seemingly very personal places. They are not intended to be. I mean, you can bring other people into it. Bashir has obviously brought the crew in to
Mm.
watch this program. He had them. Well, he had invited them, I think, to the James Bond stuff. They just hadn't always come. The kayaking, Bashir and O'Brien both do it together. But what I'm getting at though is that what's just so curious about that is that because it's so private, that's what seems to be what makes it so bizarre and off-putting. And like
Well,
Dr. Brahms, this is
and
97% like her, but I can see why
and
she was
maybe
upset.
and maybe what you're hitting on is something that other people in Trek hit on as well, because I feel like they really corrected this issue in Voyager. Voyager does a lot with holodecks, and they are very open to other people. One of the first holodeck programs that's created on Voyager is this kind of Tahitian Hawaiian beach setting, right? And they make it an open door policy, and multiple crew members come in at different times to interact with the very same program. It's kind of like their version of
Right.
Ryza, but it's on the holodeck. That's the first time. Then we see later on another scenario is created. They create a town called Fairhaven, and it's kind of like this Irish countryside village that all the crew takes part in. They all do something in there for fun, for recreation, so forth. Even the holographic doctor gets in on it, and he has his own little thing that he does. And then we see the doctor. He also creates his own holographic family, complete with house, and they've got their own, personalities and so forth. And he invites the crew members to come over, like they're his colleagues from work. And they come over after work to have dinner with the family and meet his family and his wife and his two kids. And they participate that way. Um, they have a bar setting in there as well, where again you can go in and you have some drinks, you shoot pool, all of that. So they do it a lot on Voyager, and it's kind of under the thing of, well, they're a ship stranded in the Delta Quadrant. They don't have places they can just pop over for shore leave and go to. So the
Right.
holodeck became their way of kind of handling their stresses of being stranded. So yeah,
Right.
Voyager definitely corrects on this whole uh, holographic programs done in the dark type thing. So
Okay, that makes sense actually. That especially if Voyager is lost in space, like you can't just keep the hollow suite to yourself. Like everyone wants to use it,
yeah,
and you got to share it. Maybe on the
yeah, and I mean,
Enterprise.
and many of the people we see them doing holographic programs together. Tom and Harry have this Captain Proton kind of a rip on what's it, Buckaroo Banzai, I think, or Rocket Man from the 30s. It's kind of that, and then Tuvok, the security officer, develops a program that's supposed to be a worst case scenario of what happens to the crew if somebody mutinies, which someone finds and thinks instead of it being a training program as he intended, they think, oh, this is just a fun game. And everybody starts participating in the in the storyline. And it's just like, that's not what it's supposed to be, guys. So there's that. So yeah, they are very open on Voyager about their holographic use. There's very few people that do any programs that are just for them, that are very private, the way that they're done on Next Generation or even Deep Space Nine.
Gotcha. Yeah. That makes. I mean, I once we finish Deep Space Nine, I do plan on watching Voyager, just to say I've now watched it. Whether or not we do it together or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm curious to see how they will develop all that because yeah, the I mean, because TNG, man, they really nailed on the darker aspects. And I feel like we've kind of got a hint of
Well,
it here, but it'll be nice to see how Voyager maybe kind of mellows out some of those elements.
and I think that's because of the fact that the hologram, the holodecks were new for Next Generation. That was a whole new technology that they were really kind of experimenting with, and trying to incorporate that into storylines when you really didn't have any basis for it before was really hard. And so I think that's why we didn't see much of it. And then what we did see, it had to be kind of small and self-contained, because the more people that are involved with it, then obviously pricing is going to go up, and the show was already expensive for a lot of different reasons. So they really had to keep things small, which did lead to more intimate settings. And then,
Right,
with the advent of CGI and being able to do a bit more on location stuff, that kind of opens up a bit, and that's why we kind of see an outgrowth of that a little bit, on Deep Space Nine. Dax and Kira frequently do programs together. O'Brien and Bashir do programs together. But even when we hear that they're doing programs together, we don't always see the programs that they're doing. So there's that. And then Voyager was really kind of just the explosion of that, where we see pretty much everybody's holodeck program at some point or another,
right,
and see multiple people interacting with them on it as well.
yeah,
And now, with shows like Discovery and Strange New Worlds and everything, they're retconning holograms a little bit. Like on Discovery, there is an implication anyway. They have not expressly said us what it is, but I can think of it being anything else, that holograms or the access of holographic technology is embedded in most of the ships and in most of the people's quarters. And so everybody's quarters kind of have a personal holographic device that can at least generate very simplistic holographic images and
Right.
things like that. Like there's a character that was meditating, and they had all these candles in their room for the ambiance of meditation. But then, as soon as it became necessary to, kind of clean up and go back to work, they just turned off the program and they all disappeared, and the room was back to normal. So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've talked holodecks, holograms, and holosuites to death. I will point out, Vincent was correct. It is implied with Quark that the holographic programs that he has are illicit in nature. So, and he had those before Starfleet arrived. Quark does intimate that, yeah, a lot of his programs have a sexy surprise at the end.
Yeah.
Um, you
It
know,
does take
so
the risks of such a business out of it completely when you can just turn off a program.
yeah.
uh
So, yeah,
yeah.
there's a lot of problems there with holographic technology, but doesn't seem like it's anything that's going away anytime soon. The holodecks are very, very popular. They do have people who can write holographic stories. They're called holo novelists as well. They bring that up in Voyager. The Doctor writes his own holo novel, a very controversial holo novel at one point, which again talks about holograms and their sentience and their freedom and abilities and so forth. So, um, an interesting thing that it's interesting that they bring that up in Trek, and how we treat this outgrowth of technology and the implications behind it. But we'll see what happens. So,
Right.
well, any other thoughts on his way? Well, you know what? I feel like we talked so much about Vic and holograms. We really didn't talk about the main point of this episode or the main moment of the episode, the kiss
Oh.
between Kira and Odo in the promenade.
Yeah, I mean, you see it coming a mile away.
Uh-huh.
Frankly, the way the extras in the film in that part of the episode weren't doing a good job of pretending to just be normal. They're all looking over at them. Or they're already early looking over at them, which they're kind of
Well,
loud. So I
yeah, I
get
was gonna say
that's kind of the
they're kind
direction.
of arguing with each other, so they're drawing attention to themselves.
But
But
you just know where it's going as soon as it starts going anywhere, which is fun. Again, my only problem is like I gotta let me put it this way. This is the near the end of season 6. We have a whole other season to go through. If they're gonna make this work through the end of season 7, if they want this to work, I'm gonna need them to put some work into it as a story
mhm,
as storytellers. And they have had trouble with stuff like Dax took a long time for them to figure out what to do anything with her. And it's been 6 seasons, and we've known Odo had something for her for a
mhm.
long time. So if they're finally going to commit, I need them to commit and
I
go
do
somewhere.
love I do love that scene though, where they kiss, but not for the reasons of it's like for me. Oh, finally these characters are together. It's definitely the people, because you
Yeah,
see them. Like you said, they're starting to kind of encircle our group as they're having this argument, and then finally they have the kiss. This supposedly hot, romantic, deep kiss, right to the point that even the Ferengi in the door drops his little pad that he's holding, and we hear it clatter to the floor. I just love that moment because it's just like we're supposed to believe that these two are it's so
star-crossed.
impactful, right?
Yeah,
It's such a explosion of feeling between the two of them that everyone is shocked to silence, shocked to their cores at watching these two people have
right.
this very intimate moment here in front of everyone, and the gaping mouths and the drop tablet, and you're just all you needed next was somebody to start the clap,
That's
and
true. That was
you would
missing.
that's it. That's all that was left. So, I will reveal real quick the behind the scenes on that. The kiss that we see in this episode is the kiss that was done on the first take. Um, the second kiss that we see is the cleanup, because apparently on the first kiss, when they first pulled away, Odo's makeup had run, and so her face was covered, and she was covered in this orange whatever, and then it had apparently
Messed
torn
up his.
part of his
Yeah.
mask. So
I was gonna
and
say that was the one thing that stood out to me. I forgot to mention it when I was watching it. I was like, "Kid, that's a mouthful of mask that Nana Visitor probably had to just ingest in order to
I
get this kiss off."
I also imagine, because Renee talked a lot about how sweaty he got under the mask, and how
Hmm.
when he pulled it off, it would just kind of rain out. So I could just imagine it, like it just rips open on the mouth, and it's just like, you know, just yeah, not not good, not good at all.
And then Renee Albertson Waugh, how old was he when this scene was shot versus Nana Visitor? They
I
had
mean,
a
he's a good
noticeable age
deal.
difference, right?
Yeah, yeah, he's a good deal older than she is. I want to say he's somewhere around um 10 to 15 years older than
Oh,
her.
I was thinking more like 30.
Um,
Was she
uh,
early 30s by this point, and he was like
she
late
was, yeah,
50s?
she was definitely, yeah, she was definitely um early to mid 30s at the most. And then yeah, he was, yeah, 55 probably, so maybe older. Yeah, so yeah, you're right. He's probably a good 20 years older than she is. Yeah, taking off your football helmet in August, exactly. And I had a when I played football, I always kept my head bald. I have a little hair now, but I used to keep it bald.
Right.
So when I would sweat, it would run and run and run. It was like it was raining on my face, but in particular, my inside the helmet, there are these little ear pads, and
Right.
the sweat would collect right here. So when I went to take my helmet off and I would lift it this way, it was like they would move and form channels, and I would just feel it like water running down my neck. Disconcerting the first time it happens, but you get used to it. But anyway, um, yeah, I think that you're right. I think there's a good 20-year difference between the two of them.
Right.
So yeah. Now I will say that both Odo and Kira, well, Nana and Renee, respectively, both resisted the idea initially of these two getting together. They
Mm,
thought that they should have maintained more of this platonic relationship, the just not acknowledging the love thing, and Odo eventually kind of coming to terms with it and moving on.
right.
Um, but after talking with the writers and the producers and rereading the script a few times, they both kind of came around to it, and ultimately they're very happy with the end result of the relationship at the end of the show. Not going to spoil that, but we'll get there, and they were
Right.
both happy with that. So, um,
I
but
do.
yeah,
I will say that I do feel kind of like the actors that I like the idea that Odo considered Kira as like it's a first crush type situation. I
mhm.
like that idea. The idea that you then move forward with a first crush and try and do something with it, and then it actually doesn't work out because yeah, it is just a first crush. But they have decided to move forward with it. So you say that the actors were happy with the final thing as it ends up finally. So I look forward to seeing what that'll come to.
Yeah. Well, all right. I think that that is going to do it, or at least going to have to do it for us. We've really gone over our time here. Once again,
This is pretty standard for us at this
oh
point,
yeah,
right?
yeah, absolutely. If we're not doing an hour and a half, then what are we doing,
All
right?
right.
Um, I guess really quick, I have not got the new or the next book in our Expanse series yet. I've been kind of just taking a break on things and trying to get through some other stuff. I finally got my bookshelf, and I'm putting stuff
Okay.
on it. So I think actually what I'm going to do is take some time to finally read the Cisco biography, which I
Oh,
never cracked open. I know, surprise, considering how much I loved that character. The fact that I didn't read his book yet, I'm slacking here.
right.
Um, but I've been doing a lot of other stuff, so it's all is forgiven, in my opinion.
I was
Um,
going to ask you about the Expanse, so I'm glad you're thinking about it because yeah, I'm like,
I
ooh,
am. I definitely
ready
am.
for
I
next
want
week.
to. We're almost to the end, because this will be book 8, right?
Yeah, of 9.
book 8 of 9, and then they have that 10th kind of compendium series of short stories that you got me. So I'll look forward to perusing that one later. But yeah,
Yeah,
book 8 and getting to the bottom of the proto molecule, hopefully, because they still didn't give me enough.
the last one.
I'm
Yeah.
mad. I'm mad, man. Um. Oh, and I do
Oh
remember what I
yes.
was going to say earlier about when you were talking about Silo. Vincent here reminded me. Um, I have been looking for new sci-fi shows to watch. I just can't seem to find anything. Like everything seems to be just the kind of, I guess, what we consider contemporary dramas. I'm looking for something that is in the vein of Star Trek, The Expanse, Battlestar Galactica. All these
Oh,
things I've
those kinds of shows. Yeah.
yeah, I've watched everything else, I feel like, and I just haven't really been able to find anything else. And I mean, I'm willing to branch out, but I definitely want to have a show that is a sci-fi show. So in order for it to, in my opinion, be sci-fi, space must be involved. Not tangentially involved, not, oh, we're gonna go to space someday. Meanwhile, we're dealing with farmers. No,
You
that's not the same thing.
are you saying you want space operas? Or are you just want to be clear?
Yes,
Okay, you want.
absolutely.
I
Space
can't think of
opera,
any
space
space operas right now.
right.
That's an interesting point.
We are totally devoid. Like
Has
again, think of
everyone
this.
just surrendered that to Star Trek? Let Star Trek be the space opera
I
show?
think I think that, and I think Star Wars is kind of beating everybody over the head right now
Oh
with their
gosh,
mass production factory of shows on Disney. I
stop
swear,
already. Yeah,
every 48 hours seems like they're launching yet another
it's like
something in
Disney
the
didn't
world of
realize that.
Star Wars.
Disney didn't realize that part of the reason people loved Star Wars is because they only had like small, like they only introduced new movies 30 years after the original trilogy. Like they had limited content, and now they're like, we're gonna blow that up. We're gonna produce every
With
single
every
show. Every
everything that
character
they
gets a
can.
show.
Everybody gets a show. You get a
Yeah.
show. You get a show. I mean, seriously, I just saw one recently. The actor who's in it, I can't think of what his name is, but he was in the Sherlock movies with Robert Downey Jr. and he played
Jude Law.
Watson. Jude Law,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
He's got a Star Wars show now that's getting ready to come out. I don't know anything about his character. I don't know anything about it. It seems to be him and a bunch of kids. It's really
Right.
all I could tell. But I
Right.
mean, there's just so many of them, and I feel like when people say sci-fi now, it's all Star Wars stuff. That Halo show was an absolute nightmare, and it was a flop. Thank God. I'm glad they've moved on from that nonsense. But
Right.
again, think of the shows I named, like again, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Star Trek Voyager, um, The Expanse, Firefly, um, Farscape, like any of these shows, Battlestar Galactica, they just those were it, and all of those shows that I just named have been off the air for 20 plus years.
Mhm.
I mean, yeah, I know that Star Trek is coming back with Strange New Worlds, and they've got their movie and everything else, but even that stuff was a bit restrained by the environment that it's in. I'm talking all new sci-fi stuff that does not have the stamp Star Trek, Star Wars on it anywhere.
Right.
Just completely new, thought-provoking drama stuff that is in that vein. So if anybody knows any shows that are like that, I don't care what platform they're on, Amazon, Apple, whatever it is, let
Well,
me know.
Vincent did just point out actually Dune. The movies are obviously out, but then they do have a new show on HBO called Dune Prophecy, which is supposed to
Oh,
be way like thousands of years in the past, like when the Bene Gesserit were getting started. Um, I haven't heard great things about it, unfortunately. The
oh.
show, but I guess technically someone was trying something, so I might try it. I have the other
I
books
might
I
give
still
it a
need to
shot.
read.
I really did enjoy the Dune series. I've read the books
Right.
and I have watched both of the movies, so I
Right.
may give that a shot. And just to see, you're telling me it doesn't have great reviews. It kind of sounds like the Rings of Power. Um,
I think it's better than that. I mean, I haven't watched it yet. I might give it a shot. Here's my the reason I haven't watched it yet is because I still have several of the books from the son Brian, who has written his own stuff, and I think that they have used that to kind of inspire the show. But my
okay.
understanding is that they're not like going gospel. It's not like they're treating those books as gospel. They're just like here's some content,
Well,
here's some thoughts, here's start your own storyline.
I have not read those, so it may
You
be
would rather
better
go in
for me.
fresh, yeah.
Yeah, it may be better for me to watch it that way because sometimes if you've already read the source material in any regard and then
Right,
you go and watch the show, you get disappointed, and
right,
I don't want that to happen. Like that was my main issue with the Halo show. I knew all the stuff about the show and then I or about the books and the games. I played them all. I read them. I did all the stuff,
right.
and then I watched the show and it was a complete disaster. So I don't want the same thing to happen because I mean I heard from like I said from people who had never seen anything of Halo, knew nothing of it, they seem to really enjoy the show. So maybe that's the trick. Maybe my problem is have consumed too much sci-fi media. So whatever, but we'll see. We
Right.
will see.
Cool
Well,
beans.
all right then. I will, I guess, let you guys know how Dune goes. But until next time, of course, you can find us and follow us anywhere you happen to do your social media, except for Twitter, X, whatever. X Twitter, that's what it should be called. Um, the artist
Twix.
formerly known as, right. Um,
I like Elon Musk. That was the dumbest decision he could have made. He should have just kept it as Twitter. I've said it before. I'll say it again.
yeah,
Uh,
brand recognition is everything, guys. Come on.
Everyone still says X, formerly known as Twitter, and they always will.
Yeah.
10 years from now. Uh, yeah.
Um, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, if you know of any new sci-fi shows or heck, even sci-fi books, I'm willing to look at those too. Please send them my way. You can of course reach us through our Fire Caves page on Facebook, and you can listen to us anywhere you happen to listen to podcasts. I happen to do it on Spotify, and you can of course find us here on our YouTube channel as well. So, all that being said, until next time, guys, take care of yourselves.
Thanks, guys.